Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
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 Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
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 Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari,
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Namo Vishnu Hare Krishna Vistari Vituri Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityananda. Namaste Saraswati Devi Govardhani Pracharine. Nirvisi Shunyavadi Vasti Chadijati.
Okay,
Are you still doing some recording? Oh no.
the recording's on. Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
What's that?
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Here in person we have Dear Govinda Prabhu and Damayanti Prabhu and Bhakta Vishnu. And online there is Parampara Prabhu and Anandini Prabhu and Bhakta George. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan and to Narayan, which is the supermost human being. and to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto the author, Srila Vyasadeva. Hare Krishna. Today we are reading from Canto 2, Chapter 10, Untitled Chapter, is the answer for all questions. And we are on text sorry, I got lost. On text 27. Utsis Christo Datumalam Niravidyatam Vai Udam Tata Payu Tata Mitra Utsaga Ubaya Ashraya Ushistrik Datumalam Niravidyatavai Gudam Tatapayus Tato Mitra Utsaga Ubayashrayaha Uchiskrikso Datumala Niravidyatavai Gudam Tatapayus Tato Mitra Utsayo Ubayashrayaha Uchiskrikso Datumalam Niravidyatavai Gudam Tatapayus Tato Mitra Utsaga Ubayashrayaha Ushikshikso Datumalam Niravidyatavai Gudam Tatapayus Tato Mitra Utsaga Ubayashrayam Uchiskrikso Datumalam Niravidyatavai Gudam Tatapayus Tato Mitra Utsaga Ubayashrayam Uchiskrikso Datumala Niravidyatavai Gudam Tatapayus Tato Mitra Utsaga Ubayashrayam. Someone online would like to chant the verse? Okay. Uchiskrikso, desiring to evacuate. Datumalam, refuse of eatables. Niravidyata, became open. Vai, certainly. Kudam, evacuating on whole. Tata, thereafter. Payu, the vacuum sense organ. Tata, thereafter. Mitra, the controlling demigod. Utsaga, the substance evacuated. Ubaya, both. Ashraya, shelter. Translation. Thereafter, when he desired to evacuate the refuse of eatables, the evacuating hole, anus, and the sensory organ thereof developed along with controlling deity, Mitra. The sensory organ and the evacuating substance are both under the shelter of the controlling deity. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Even in the matter of evacuating stool, the refuse is controlled. So how can a living entity claim to be independent? Om Agyanati Mirandasya Gyana Jala Shalakaya Shakshun Militanyena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakadam Mayam Dadati Swapadam Tikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Shri Krishna Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Kam Vitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Govangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyacha Kripav Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvasesha Shunyavadi Paskacharya Jatarini Mukam Koti Vachalam Bangum Langayati Grigam Yatri Patamam Vande Shagum Dejatarini. Hare Krishna. Thereafter, when he desired to evacuate or refuse of eatables, the evacuating whole anus and the sensory organ thereof develop along with the controlling deity Mitra. The sensory organ and the evacuating substance are both under the shelter of the controlling deity. Hare Krishna. So I have a disclaimer here, is that Dear Govinda Prabhu asked me maybe at the beginning of the week to give class on Saturday, not knowing what the topic of the class would be or what was the verse about. So I found that very interesting because I have been focusing on anus and evacuating and stool for the last 9 months. Quite a big part of my consciousness. I've been there because I experience every day a reminder of that part of my body not being, that I'm not in control of that part of my body. So that's something I have realization about. So I feel happy to speak about the topics that I have some realization about.
Must have been super soul.
Must have been super soul, I imagine. Yeah. And usually with such a short purport, I will go on and read the next verse and purport. But I decided, no, I don't want to do that. There is a short purport and I'm going to stay speaking about anus and stool and evacuating because that's having the level of my consciousness for the last 9 months. So I'm honored. And so we are continuing to see Janma Yasya Yataha, that whatever is in the effect is in the source. That's a second aphorism from the Vedanta Sutra. The first one being Attato Brahma Vikyasa. So yes, the purpose of life is to inquire about the absolute truth. And then right there, we are given like everything that's in effect must be in the source. So it makes sense that whatever we experience in our ability to see, our ability to hear, our ability to speak, our ability to smell, our ability to work with our hand, our ability to to walk with our legs, that must be first in the cause to be in the effect. Otherwise, like, how can we make sense of things? Like, if what is in us is not there in the source. So we have seen through those different verses in this chapter how we have no abilities to have any sense organ, knowledge acquiring senses, working senses, unless they are desired by the Lord and manifested thereof from the Lord desire. Whatever the Lord desire is manifested. Is like there is no difference between the Lord desires and reality. For us, there is a big difference. We tend to dream, and there is a difference between what we desire. Even like if I desire to drink some water here, water is not going to come to quench my thirst. I will need to do something or work very hard or ask someone, but it's not going to happen just because of my desire. And on the transcendental realm, in the spiritual realm, Krishna desire is complete and perfect, and there is no difference between his desire and reality. And the devotee's desire in service to Krishna also are the same. Whatever we desire in service to Krishna is automatically manifested if our desire is sincere and clean from any material contamination or personal agenda. So here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada just focusing on what's obvious is what we take for granted. We take for granted that we are in control of the anus and that we can evacuate whenever we choose to. But that's illusion. You know, just the fact that there is an anus is not under our control. Just the fact that we need to evacuate the reject of food that we inject is not under our control. How can we imagine that we are in control? Yesterday I was speaking with someone, and the person was sharing so much anxiety, feeling so much anxiety about the future, feeling anxiety like that person is aging, you know, coming to a place where it's obvious aging is taking place, you know, like around 50, there is a sense like, you know, for women when menopause come and men, you know, it's just like the gray hair and so many things happen. So that person was sharing for me anxiety. And then, you know, I was reflecting with that person how yes, we should have anxiety because there is no guarantee that tomorrow morning I will wake up with 2 legs. There's no guarantee that tomorrow morning I will be able to move my arm. There's no guarantee that one morning I'm not going to wake up with extreme pain somewhere or something breaking down in my body. So naturally, like in that situation, which is our context, no, you know, we take for granted. We take for granted so many things about our life situation, and about our body. I think it's even more extreme that I will be able to eat. Or what, you know, like the last few months, I've experienced time where I don't want to eat and I'm not able to eat or drink. And we take it for granted, like, okay, in the morning I drink a big cup of water and it just come to my body and no difficulty in drinking. And I have experienced great difficulty in just drinking water, like great pain and difficulty just in drinking water. So we have a tendency, and I know I see that in me, to take so many things for granted. And if we were to put our intelligence, you know, be intelligent a little bit and see like, no, I really didn't control the circumstance of my birth. I'm the source of the circumstance of my birth. Did I control them? No, I would have chosen a different situation, maybe a different mother, a different father, a different like place. Maybe I would have gone to, you know, I wanted to grow up on the ocean. I was so clear when I was a little girl that, oh my God, my dream was to live on the Mediterranean Sea. And I was, it was my desire, and it didn't manifest, and it haven't manifested yet. And so it's very interesting that we are taking our life for granted and our body for granted, when in fact what our lot in this life, we haven't like controlled what came, and we haven't been in control, if we are really honest, of most of what's happening in our life. And so with a little bit of intelligence, we can realize that, okay, if I'm not in control and things are happening like eating and evacuating and in my body, then someone else must be in control. So with that person, we were speaking about anxiety, and I acknowledged for her, I didn't try to reassure her, not at all. I said, yes, we should be in anxiety. This is a word of Kunta, anxiety. And we have no control, we have no independence. Any moment, anything can happen. Right now, I don't know if I will be able to continue to speak until the end of this class. Why will I take that for granted? There's no guarantee. So many things could happen inside my body, outside of my body. And so yes, it's a place of anxiety. And for us to step out of anxiety means going to Vaikuntha. And Vaikuntha, we see it is a geographical place, but it's also a consciousness, and it's mainly a consciousness. And that consciousness is very intricately connected with that sense of dependence. If we understand that we are dependent, we have some independence for sure. We have some independence, and if we understand our dependence, then we will stop acting independently. And by stopping acting independently and accepting that dependence, and I was sharing with that person, like, okay, in her term, well, accepting reality that yes, I could be very healed. My finance could completely disappear. I accepted that reality, and then choosing, what do I do with that reality? Not trying to control reality. However, we have choices. We have independence of how we choose to respond to reality. We don't have choice to the reality again. We have choice how we respond to the reality that come to us. And by choosing to respond to the reality that come to us, by accepting that dependence, understanding that dependence, and then with it, that system that the Lord created the whole cosmic manifestation. There is an order. We are hearing about that order of the thing manifesting, order of the controlling deities, Mitra. I'm trying to remember Mitra. Maybe I should do puja to Mitra, because my anus is still not working, and so I should maybe like get serious about doing puja to Mitra. And that system is perfect, and the Vedic literature guides us to be surrendered, submissive, dependent on that system by doing our duty. And our duty is explained within that system is to the demigods. Our duty is to act according to regulation of the Vedic system, according to the law of God. And when we do that, when we act according to the law of God, we are within the system. And it is described that when all the interdependent three principle of Adibhautika and Adidaivaka and Adhyatmika are, when they are in that natural interdependence, and Adhyatmika does fulfill that interdependence, does fulfill the role of that interdependence, then it describes that those threefold misery almost disappeared. And I read a very nice purport in the fourth canto. I have the fourth canto here. There are so many places I want to go in the fourth canto, but I don't think I will go to all of them. And the king, Prasina Barisha, he was doing a lot of fruitive activities. And fruitive activity in his context didn't mean like he was taking the subway every day to go to work. to make money. In his context, it means he was doing a lot of sacrifice, gyagya, because that's what we live, sacrifice to Vishnu. And he was doing a lot of sacrifice to the demigods. And as such, he was living according to the Vedic principles, and he was living according to that interdependence of those three principles, controlling agents that work simultaneously. So, and in the purport, Srila Prabhupada said, because of that, the king wasn't experiencing the threefold misery. And Prabhupada said, in this life and in the next, because, you know, like his activity will lead him to being heavenly planets, where those threefold misery are not so prominent. However, Srila Prabhupada make a very interesting point in his purport, because he said, but the problems are always there. The problems are going to stay there. And what are the problems? Birth, you know, death, old age, and disease. And so it's interesting that in one hand, we speak about the threefold miseries that are limited, but then the problems, they are there. So even the disease is there. Maybe it's mitigated by in some ways, and less, but the problems are still there. As long as we're in the material world, we are not going to get away from them. And Prabhupada makes a point that even if we follow the Vedic rituals, the Vedic principle, that we live in harmony with those three principles, then we are not guaranteed to step out of the material tabernacle, the material energy. And that the only way to do that is by devotional service to the Lord, to Krishna, to Lord Vishnu. And so King Prasina Barisha, he was doing very well, but then Narada Muni came to him, and Narada Muni said, okay, well, yeah, but that's not that impressive that you follow all the Vedic rituals and all. That's not that impressive. And then the king surrendered and said, please tell me what will take me out of the cycle of birth and death. What will take me? Because yeah, I'm staying here, I'm satisfied, my life is pretty easy. I want to get out. I want something else. I want to get out. And then Narada Muni went into sharing a story, because there's always inside story about King Puranjan. And King Puranjan's story, it's kind of a really fascinating allegory. It's a really fascinating part of the Bhagavatam, really, because that's the only part I know anyway, where Srila Prabhupada really go into the allegory, and he dive into it. He dive into all, like, the meaning of the King Puranjan travel all over the place to find the proper place for him to live, and he could never be satisfied. So similarly, no matter what we give to our body or whatever body we have, satisfaction is not going to come as long as we are in the material world. So that's satisfaction. And then all of a sudden, he found a city that really feels really remarkable for him. And he said, like, it's a special body of Bharatvarsha. So like that, the city, it's a city of 9 gates. So the city where Puranjan goes, he has like flower and lakes and bridges and birds, and everything is in abundance, and all the buildings are full, bedecked with jewels all around. And Srila Prabhupada, every purport, he goes to the allegory, how this is a body. The body has so much attractive possibilities of enjoyment. And then so I will read a little bit. From that chapter. So it's called Characteristic of King Puranjan, and I'm going to read some. So it's very fascinating purport and a very fascinating story encourage you to go into it. He said, those who are interested only in a so-called beautiful life, namely remaining as a householder entangled by sons and a wife and searching after wealth, think that such a things are life's ultimate goal. Such people simply wander in different type of body throughout this material existence without finding out the ultimate goal of life. So that's now Malini speaking to the king. And then in the allegory, I found a purport about understanding that as soon as we are born, we have obligation. We have obligation. We have obligation to all the demigods. We have obligation to the sages for giving us knowledge about how to use this. We have obligation to our parents, and we have obligation to the forefathers. So if we don't fulfill those obligations, we are going to suffer the reaction of that. It's natural. It's every principle that we know that we can relate to are like that. There is rules, there is regulation, there is a rule of the road, there is so many rules, regulation. If we don't follow them, if we don't follow the obligation, then naturally there is consequences and reaction. And then if we do follow, if we know that we are born with a debt and we pay that debt regularly, then our life becomes more peaceful. But Shri Prabhupada will tell us more about our obligation. In text 40, so that's Canto 4, Chapter 25, the characteristic of King Puranjan, and that's text 40. So King Puranjan is like this. There is a description of the city of the Nine Gate, which is the body. And then King Puranjan, he meet a woman. She's so attractive and beautiful and fresh and beautiful breasts and everything. And of course, he's attracted to her. And in allegory, that woman is intelligence. An intelligence that can be charming, so charming. Our intelligence can be so charming. So the woman said, according to authority, the householder life is pleasing not only to oneself, but to all the forefathers, demigods, great sage, saintly person, and everyone else. A householder life is thus beneficial. So in a purport, Srila Prabhupada described, according to the Vedic system, when one is born in a material world, he has many obligations. He has obligation to the demigods of the sun and moon, King Indra, Varuna, and I will add Mitra, even so it's not on the list, because they are supplying the necessities of life. So Mitra is supplying to the desire of the Lord and Annas. So we receive heat, light, water, all other natural amenities to the mercy of the demigods. We are also indebted to our forefathers who have given us these bodies, paternal properties, intelligence, society, friendship, and love. Similarly, we are indebted to the general public for politics and sociology. We are also indebted to lower animals such as horses, cows, asses, dogs, and cats. In this way, as soon as one is born in the material world as a human being, he has so many obligations and is bound to repay all those obligations. So, yeah, because we haven't controlled anything, we haven't created anything, we haven't been working hard, then, yeah, we have obligation to everything we receive in this lifetime. The moment we are born with obligations. If he does not repay them, he is further entangled in the process of birth and death. The Griyamedi, however, who is overly addicted to material things, does not know that if he simply takes shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, he is immediately free from all obligation to others. Unfortunately, a Griyamedi does not have any interest in Krishna consciousness. Prahlad Maharaj says, Matirna Krishna Parata Swatova Mito Bipadyeta Griha Vatanam. A Griya Vrata is the same as a Griyamedi. one would take sex life to be supreme, find action in Krishna consciousness confuse him, either due to his own personal consideration or due to his having taken instruction from others and conferring with them. He becomes addicted to sexual indulgence and cannot act in Krishna consciousness. So there is two processes. There is a process that we will say is a staircase process, and then there is an elevator process. So in a Vedic paradigm, we are born with obligation, we fulfill our obligation, we elevate ourselves for a better birth next life. And then life after life, we get in those better births, we get to be more and more exposed to understanding who is the supreme controller and finally surrender. And then there is a process of devotional service that, okay, those obligations are fine, but I'm going to serve Krishna. And by serving Krishna directly, then I free myself from all those obligations because Krishna is a source of all, because Ishwara Parama Krishna, Sakshit Ananda Vira, Adir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. Sarva Karana Karanam is like Krishna is the source of all causes, is the cause of all causes. So if we go directly to the source, we don't need to go to the intermediary, like necessity or fulfilling our obligation. By serving the cause of all causes, we enter into an intimate circle with the Lord where we are not anymore under the law of the material energy. He said that Srila Prabhupada, in one of the purports of the third canto, he said, devotional service is done with intimacy and respect. And he said intimacy doesn't mean familiarity, but intimacy needs to be there and respect needs to be there at the same time. Not that in the name of intimacy, there is no more respect. Or in the name of respect, we don't develop intimacy. It is both together. So by performing devotional service to the Lord with that kind of intimacy and respect, we are directly connected with the source. So in a sense, we are no longer needed the system created for our purification, because the system of devotional service directly put us back to our original constitutional position. And in that original constitutional position, there is no need for reformatory action. So I'm going to continue with King Puranjan and the woman describing the cities of the Nine Gates.
Puranjan translates as the person who lives in the city of the body.
Thank you. So for those who are maybe not here heard what Dear Govindas Prabhu said, he said, Puranjan's translate in one who live in the cities of the Nine Gates of the body. So the lady says, of the Nine Gates is the cities, 7 were on the surface because he said the body was immersed in water, and 2 were subterranean. A total of 9 doors were constructed, and those led to different places. All the gates were used by the city's governor. So all those gates are the eyes, the ears, the nostril, and the mouth, and then the genital and the anus. So and it described those gates where they are. Some are in the east, some are in the west, some are in the north, where some are in the south, and then what they bring. And then there is the one on the west side, which is text 53, and we are going to read text 53 and the purport. He said, so the woman, the intelligence speaking to Puranjan, the person in the body, the Kshetragya. Kshetragya is the knower of the body, so the embodied soul. Another gate on the western side was known as Niriti. Puranjana used to go through this gate to the place known as Vaishsasa, accompanied by his friend Lubdaka. So the purport will give you an idea of all the purport in that chapter, where this is a story and it's about gates and the city and and a king moving there and there. And then in every purport, Srila Prabhupada go into an allegoric significance of that story. So he said, this is a reference to the rectum. The rectum is supposed to be situated on the western side of the eyes, nose, and ears. This gate is especially meant for death. When an ordinary living entity abandons his present body, he passes through the rectum. It is therefore painful. When one is called by nature to evacuate, one also experiences pain. The friend of the living entity who accompanies him through this gate is named Lubdaka, which means greed. Due to our greed, we eat unnecessarily, and such a gluttony causes pain at the time of evacuation. The conclusion is that the living entity feels well if he evacuates properly. This gate is known as Niriti, or the painful gate. So for me, it was really interesting to read that, because for the last 9 months again, I have experienced so much pain in that gate of my body. So like pain that often when I was going to the bathroom, Shapa would speak about that, I wanted to scream. And sometimes I did scream because it was so painful. So that's the body. The body is full of potential for happiness, some potential for happiness, and unlimited, like very limited, in fact, very limited potential for happiness. And as we age, we feel that even more and more. In youth, maybe we are so much taking it for granted and in illusion that we think that the body is just there to give us pleasure. Even so, we get so much pain from the body and the mind and the intelligence. But the aging process is a very beautiful process, because it gets us to really understand the potential, the limited potential for happiness in the body, and the unlimited potential for pain within the body. So that was about the painful gate. And in Srila Prabhupada, in his purport, he directly connects that with the greed of wanting to eat. From the Nectar of Instruction, Vacho Vegan, Manaso, Koda Vegan. So Vacho Vegan means like the tongue, like self-control starts with the tongue. And often Srila Prabhupada described that if we cannot control the tongue, we are not going to control the other organs, including the genitals. They are in all one straight line. Sarira Vidyaja, Jitendriya, Taekana, Jive, Pelevisaya, Sagari. So, like the tongue is considered like the most voracious of all the senses. And it's also a path leading to hell. It's also a path leading to hell. So controlling our eating, of course, by eating prashadam, and in one of those purports, I may read it, Prabhupada made it clear, eating prashadam is wonderful. And there is such a thing as also eating more than required, even of prashadam. That will lead other senses to become really agitated. So the tongue and our eating process is going to make a big difference. And Prabhupada often makes that point that of the tongue is the senses that can take all the other senses down. And in this purport, it's explained that it comes from greed. Greed wanted to eat more than we required, which will lead to pain in evacuation, and later on leading to death. So we are not free. And if we are adhere to the rules and regulation of the creation of Krishna's system, then our life is going to be more painful, more peaceful. I'm going to read from the next chapter, 26. I enjoy so much reading about King Puranjan. that I wanted to share with you. And so in chapter 26, King Poranja goes to the forest to hunt. Srila Prabhupada in the purport of text 6 says, the question may be raised why a living being should be restricted in sense gratification. So many people, they are telling us that you don't need to restrain your senses. You can be spiritual. You don't need to restrain your senses. Those things like you can have sex and not restrain your and be spiritual. You can even, take intoxication and chant Hare Krishna, and you will have such a high, and you will really enjoy, and you will feel Krishna and be with Krishna. So there is so much of that kind of philosophy, and it's not new because, that story with Narada Muni, like that question is there. So why restricting the sense gratification? If a king, to learn how to kill, so the king went to the forest to kill animals, may go to the forest and kill animals. Why should a living entity who has been given senses not be allowed unrestricted sense gratification? Though that's a question. That's a rhetorical question that Prabhupada asked at the beginning of his purport. And I appreciate that question, and I'm very eager to hear how Prabhupada presents the response. At the present moment, this argument is put forward even by the so-called swamis and yogis, who publicly said that because we have senses, we must satisfy them by sense gratification. I heard so many people telling me, like, animals, they are there for us. We have dominion over them. In the Bible, it says, and the only reason for their existence is for the satisfaction of my tongue. Some people think like that. So if I have senses, that must be that I'm supposed to enjoy them. I'm not looking like when we buy, like I gave an example of the juicer. If I have the juicer and I'm not looking at the manual, then I can imagine that button is for something else than what it is. I'm not looking at the manual, I just speculate. If I have senses, that must be that I go to enjoy them and feed them unrestrictively. That makes sense, because otherwise, why will I have senses? So that's what Prabhupada is presenting here. So the foolish swamis and yogi, however, do not know the injunction of the Shastra. Indeed, sometimes these rascals come out to defy the Shastras. They even publicly announce that there should be no more Shastra, no more book. Just come to me, they say, and I shall touch you, and you will become immediately spiritually advanced. You don't need to study the Shastra. You don't need to know the rule and regulation. Try to avoid the Shastra because they will give you the rule and regulation. So avoid them altogether and just come to me, and I will make you feel so good. I think it's so funny. Because demoniac people want to be cheated. So many cheaters are present to cheat them. At the present moment in this age of Kali Yuga, the entire human society has become an assembly of cheaters and cheated. For this reason, the Vedic scriptures have given us the proper direction for sense gratification. So that's not that there is no sense gratification. We do have senses, and we do need to, take care of them. And how we do that? We are guided to do that by the Vedic literature. Everyone is inclined in this age to eat meat and fish and drink liquor and indulge in sex life. Okay, according to the Vedic instruction, sex is allowed only in marriage. Meat eating is allowed only when the animal is killed and offered before the goddess Kali. And intoxication is allowed only in a restricted way. In this verse, the word niyamyatit indicates that all these things, namely animal killing, intoxication, and sex, should be regulated. So the regulation, that's what the Shastra give us. And so much of it, I know as a coach, transformative coach, so much of coaching is about supporting people in regulation. It's not about supporting restriction, because what is repression going to accomplish? Often people, they are so eager to make vow, like, I'm not going to do that anymore for the rest of my life. And the role of the coach is that say, is that true? and then to lead people to regulation. So the Shastra, the Veda, the system is so much about regulated our senses, regulated what we eat, regulated our sex life, regulated even intoxication here. I'm curious what it means, but recently I was confronted with, taking a lot of pain medicine, for example, and I was given morphine even from before I took radiation and chemo because I was in such a pain, and they didn't want me to take Tylenol because it will do something with the chemo. So they put me on morphine, and it was terrible. Terrible. Like I felt like the way it was altering my consciousness, the way I felt, just like terrible, horrible. And then it's addictive. So nowadays there's a big crisis in America from painkiller addiction. Painkiller addiction is very, very common. It's a really big problem. And so, yes, there is marijuana, that's a herb. And there is regulation in the state of Florida that if you're sick, and instead of you getting addicted to oxycodone and morphine and those things, here you can take, but it's not like unrestricted use for satisfying my desire to be high, avoid pain. It's just, okay, here is something better. It's very regulated. You can take it in that way. So that, I'm not sure that's what Srila Prabhupada means there, but it was interesting to see that even they're indicated in those, that it's right there in a restricted way. Regulations are meant for human beings, not for animals. The traffic, so that here we come to the analogy. The traffic regulation on the street, telling people to keep the right or the left, are meant for human beings, not for animals. So that's also for us to understand, like often the philosophy is that animals do that, so why not me? Like monkeys, they have so many she monkeys that they have sex all day long. Even if human being wanted to do that, they don't have the capacity to do it, to follow the monkeys. But the rule and regulation of the road are made for human beings, not for animals. The rule and regulation of the cosmic manifestation are not made for animals. Animals cannot drink, and animals don't have the capacity, and that's why they're animals. And if they break the laws, there is no reaction, there is no consequences for them, but there is consequences for us. There is consequences to all our action. They are not meant for the animals, but for the understanding of human society. A person who indiscriminately violates the rules and regulations given by the Veda is liable to be punished. One should therefore not enjoy his senses according to his lusty desires, but should restrict himself according to the regulative principle given in the Veda. If a king is allowed to hunt in the forest, it is not for his self-gratification. We cannot simply experiment in the art of killing. If a king, being afraid to meet grouse and feed skillful animals and their flesh comfortably at home, he must lose his position, because in this age, kings have such a demoniac propensities. Monarchy is abolished by the laws of nature in every country. So I'm going to show. Okay. People have become so degraded. I love that word. So degraded in this age that on one hand, they restrict polygamy, and on the other hand, they hunt for women in so many ways. Many business concerns publicly advertise the topless girls are available in clubs and in that shop. So in a Vedic paradigm, there is more women than men. So a woman is going to be protected by her husband, and maybe a husband who is capable to maintain more than one wife, will have more than one wife, not to exploit them, but to protect them, to provide for them, to shelter them, to allow, to bring them children. And then, of course, our being, we are so trained by this modern Western society, we think, this is bad. This is really, really bad. But then going out and just hunting for women and having women being the prey of so many men in so many ways, and including in advertisement, including in business, including in trade. This is okay. Somehow it doesn't rub us the same way as in polygamy. So that Prabhupada points that out, and it's for us to really see. Often Prabhupada kind of jerked our Western conditioning because he wants us to see that we always are Chakshusha. Like we see the world according to our knowledge, according to our conditioning, according to our training, according to what we have received from society. And Prabhupada wants us to see that you have received a certain conditioning, question your conditioning. Like Byron Katie, she's like a big facilitator of personal development. And her big thing is investigation. Investigate. Do I investigate? Polygamy is bad. Is that true? Is that absolutely true? And to investigate all our conditioning to see, how am I thinking? Am I really thinking for my intelligence out of the box, or am I thinking when I'm thinking about something because I have been conditioned to think like that, or because it serves my senses and my mind, and it serves my sense gratification and lust to think that way. So I'm going to skip to the next verse. Next verse said, so Narada Muni is going back to speak with King Prasinabarisha. Narada Muni continued to speak to King Prasinabarishat. My dear king, any person who walks according to the direction of the Vedic scripture does not become involved in fruitive activities. And in that, the purpose, Srila Prabhupada speak out how the laws of material nature are so stringent. Like, for example, he give an example, like if a child puts his finger in a fire, even so it may not know that fire burns, he is going to be burned. So we are burned again and again like that. And we may know or we may not know the laws of material nature, but it doesn't matter. Those laws are so stringent. So because we get kicked again and again by those laws, at one point, we are going to surrender. At one point, we are going to be like, I'm tired. I'm tired of being burned. I'm tired of all that. I'm tired. What's the solution? Where is knowledge? Where is understanding of me getting kicked all the time? And by that exhaustion of being kicked, then we get to surrender. And then in the story of King Puranjan, he's kicked, in so many ways. And then finally, he found someone who give him knowledge. And it's described that when he receives that knowledge, the allegory goes into like receiving fresh scented water and ointment and oil. And that's how it in allegory is described, that knowledge is so fulfilling, like a really beautiful massage with beautiful fragrance and ointment, and that knowledge coming from the spiritual master. So I'm going to go and text 12, and then we'll stop soon. So the text 12 said, and the purport said, when a man comes, just to give you a test of King Puranjan allegory. After this, King Puranjan decorated his body with suitable ornament and also smeared scented sandalwood pulp all over his body and put on flower garland. In this way, he became completely refreshed. After this, he began to search out his queen, the queen being intelligent. When a man comes into good consciousness and accepts a saintly person as a spiritual master, he hears many Vedic instruction in the form of philosophy, stories, narration about great devotees, and transaction between God and his devotees. In this way, a man becomes refreshed. in mind, exactly like a person who smeared scented sandalwood pulp all over his body and decorated himself with ornaments. This decoration may be compared to knowledge of religion and the self. Through such a knowledge, one becomes detached from the material way of life and engage himself in always hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and other Vedic literature. The word swad alankrita used in this verse indicates that one must be absorbed in knowledge gathered from the instruction of the saintly person, Jai Shri Prabhupada. Just as King Puranjat began to search out his better half, the queen, was intelligent. One is decorated with knowledge, and one who is decorated with knowledge and instruction from saintly person should try to search out his original consciousness, Krishna consciousness. So it's like we receive knowledge, we receive guidance from the spiritual master, chants Hare Krishna at least 16 rounds, follow those regulative principles. They are the regulative principle of freedom, get free, free yourself from the entanglement, and search for your original consciousness to your intelligence. One cannot return to Krishna consciousness unless he is favored by the instruction of saintly person. Therefore, Srila Narottam Das Thakur sing, Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya, Sisete Kariyo Akya. If we want to become saintly person, if we want to become saintly person, or if we want to return to our original Krishna consciousness, we must associate with sadhu, saintly person, Shastra, authoritative Vedic literature, and Guru, bona fide spiritual master. This is the process. And so we need to seek our intelligence, and through our intelligence we can understand. We can understand, and for us, Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu, they are all coming from Srila Prabhupada. We don't have other experience, and through that, it's such a balm, such a balm. I remember the first time I read Srila Prabhupada's books, it was The Science of Self-Realization. And I remember until that point in my life, I was aware of a deep dissatisfaction. And I was really doing so many things, including what led me to meet the devotee, leaving everything behind and traveling. I wanted to feel that quench, like there was a deep dissatisfaction, regardless how much money I had in my bank account, regardless how many friends I had, regardless how popular I was, regardless of what people, food, whatever material opulence was in my life, I wasn't satisfied. And by Krishna's mercy, that's really Prabhupada's mercy. Somehow, I think because like the first connection with Prabhupada was when I was 15. And even though I was not conscious, it was Agyata Sukriti, and unknowingly doing devotional service. Like I believe that what planted the seed to question that dissatisfaction and to not try to cover it by more money or better comfort or more safety in my life, and allow me to just give up everything for that search, that quest. I went on a quest, and I was in that quest for 2 years. And regardless, doing all the things I wanted to do, all the adventurous things, all the things that most people dream of, crossing the Atlantic Ocean, doing scuba diving, going 100 meters down inside the ocean, swimming with dolphins and stingrays and shark in the ocean, and playing in steel band in Caribbean Islands, and meeting a band and being part of a traveling band and playing bass, and so many things that people only dream of. And I did them. I did all of them. And still, that yearning, that dissatisfaction wasn't going away. It was just right there with me in my face again and again. And when I started chanting Hare Krishna, and I remember specifically when I started reading The Science of Self-Realization, for the first time in my life, I felt a relief from that nut, from that deep dissatisfaction. For the very first time, I felt a lifting of, like as if I finally was able to breathe. So that's what King Puranjan, he had everything and more. And that's what he experienced as soon as he received guidance from the gurus. And the gurus, Srila Prabhupada, is so perfect, so giving us all the guidance that we need. If we follow in his footsteps, if we hold on to his lotus feet, he's going to take us back to Godhead, regardless our shortcoming, regardless our inability, regardless our whatever conditioning we are into. As long as we endeavor and not like seriously to follow his basic instruction, chant at least 16 rounds and follow 4 regulative principles. Hare Krishna, dear devotee, thank you for listening. It was a pleasure to share King Puranjan's allegory with you. And I'm going to read the verse, and again, a far out verse, so connected with my own experience. Uchis skrik sordatu malam nirabidyata valgudam tatapayus tata mitra utsarga ubayashraya. Thereafter, when he desired to evacuate the refuse of eatables, the evacuating hole, anus, and the sensory organ thereof developed along with the controlling deity Mitra, the sensory organ, and the evacuating substance are both under the shelter of the controlling deities. So it's under the shelter of the controlling deity, not my glashing. Jaya Hare Krishna. Any comment, question, sharing, realization? Hare Krishna. I was imagining that anus is a very fascinating topic.
Okay, well, here in your class, yesterday we spoke about sex. Today we're speaking about stool.
Yeah.
So so I'm appreciating the regulations, the regulative principles. Because a theme of yesterday's class and discussion was that okay, because these things that are regulated, that's the stuff that's the cause of 99% of the shame.
The shame, yeah.
The shame. And say, if someone can say, no, it's but you can't really tell me anything, because even apart from Shastra, I've been in the field of counseling, therapy, transformation. I've been in a few circle of shames. So you can't tell me anything. Just like this is stuff around sex, stuff around mistreatment of animals, stuff around what I did with money, what I didn't do with money, and stuff around drugs and intoxication. Yeah. I stole this, and then when I was drunk, I did this, and like that. So even apart from Shastra, just my experience as a counselor in psychology going back 45 years, like this is the stuff around shape. So just like we ought to be, I ought to be like profoundly grateful for these regulative principles. They're the opposite of repression. That to the extent that I follow them, I'm freed from entangling myself in gross, disgusting feelings of shame. So that's one thing that comes home to me.
Yeah. So much of coaching and so much of what you have heard, and I have heard too, is like the heaviness of the shame, and how shame is an emotion that's so degrading and connected with those 4 regulative principles. Yeah. Sex life, gambling is a big one, like what people do with money and stuff. Eating and what people do to animals, yeah. Intoxication. yeah, that's basically it.
That's it.
I don't know what else.
Yeah, that's why I say
People share.
it might be 100%, but just to be conservative, I said 99%.
Yeah.
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 Of what the shame is about.
Yeah, and then so we can say thank you Shastras and thank you Vedic Injunction, because you give me knowledge to avoid shame and to avoid degradation and to avoid so much a life of pain. Yeah. The regulative principle of freedom for sense.
Yeah, let me say it, yes. Yeah, thank you, Anita. Thank you, Shastri. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, because as you said, I mean, yeah, for me personally, not necessarily for everyone here, but for me, like Shastra, yeah, Shastra is Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, yeah, the Prabhupada's teachings, Shastra, and yeah. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that connection with the Shem and the circle of Shem and coaching, and how it's all connected with those four regulative principles. And if we stay away from them, then we have freedom. Like our car is not going to be entangled in mud. Our car is not going to be, floating in water or whatever. Our car is going to smooth on the road. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Baul. Anything else?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Krishna,
Thank you, Malini, for showing me how much wisdom and learning can come from the anise.
Yeah.
It's quite amazing.
I know a lot about that.
Yeah, I got the sense of that. Yeah, that's actually the main thing I wanted to share, how impressed I am. And I was actually thinking, like, with my siblings, my sisters and my brother, they have small children, and they're just in this age of learning to be without nappies, learning to use the toilet. So I've had conversations with them, and yeah, like, so many kids are shamed because they're not in control of stool.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's reality. We are not in control.
Yeah.
So that's quite crazy. No?
Yeah. It's painful for me to hear that, that children are shamed because they are not in control of their sphincter. I guess I haven't been exposed to that, but I imagine it's true, because when I started to be incontinent, which is a few months now, then I felt shame. I don't anymore. I don't. It's just, okay, that's what's happening, and I'm going to take care of it, and like that. I don't have control of my sphincter. I don't have control of my anus. Okay. But at the beginning, I can relate to that, and probably because it was coming from childhood. Yeah, because we are not in control. Mitra is.
Yeah.
Mitra is the one that's in control.
What a post.
Maybe what a post, yeah. Maybe you can tell parents, that child is not in control. You should really be angry and chastise Mitra.
Yeah. Actually, I want to say that my siblings, they are very conscious of that, and it came up at school, starting school and starting kindergarten, and yeah.
Yeah, so maybe
Mitra is in control.
The teacher should know that. Mitra is in control. And also, I will challenge the teacher. How do you know that tomorrow you're going to be in control of your sphincter?
Mm.
Yeah? How does she know? Or he knows that tomorrow is not going to be like a little child and not being controlled. Yeah. Mm. If it's not tomorrow, it's the day after tomorrow. A lot of people, just by aging, they need nappies again. So, yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. I think you have added another dimension to our conversation about the rectum and not being in control. Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Anything else?
I could say a Gyani Sankhya question around the verse.
Okay.
Okay, so the verse reads, so the verse reads, when you desire to evacuate the refuse of eatables, the evacuating whole anus, and the sensory organ thereof developed along with controlling the mitra. Okay, so there's two entities. There's a distinction. There's the evacuating hole or anus, and then there's the sensory organ.
There's a walking senses and that's that.
Right. So what is the sensory organ? Like
I was wondering, yeah.
Okay. Oh, so you're looking to me.
Oh, you're asking me the question.
That's a question.
What's a sensory organ? I was wondering because I was thinking, okay, well, you know, like how the tongue is there for testing and speaking.
Yeah.
So testing is a knowledge acquiring sense.
Yeah.
And speaking is a walking acquiring sense.
Right.
And so I was thinking, okay, so for anus, walking is evacuating. And then what's a sensory? You know, and I had, you know, dinner conversation with my roommate last night. And we were thinking about, what about gay people? So that's where we went.
Okay.
So I don't know, you know, I don't know because I know when I got diagnosed, that's the question I was asked a lot, did you have anal sex? So I don't know if the Veda was there. You know, for me, it's something I was really with that, but maybe, you know, like I will not speculate about it, but that's the conversation I had with my roommate last night around the dinner table.
Well, thank you for that. One conjecture that comes to me is like, I think the same could be said for like, there's the eyes, but the eyes aren't really the senses. There's like the sense of sight. There's the sense of sight, which is something subtle, subtle material.
Yes.
And what we call the eyes is actually the seat of the senses. It's the seat of the visual sense. So we have what we call the nose. And we can say, oh, that's the sense of, that's the olfactory sense, but not really. That the olfactory sense, the sense of smell, is some subtle matter. And what we call the nose is the seat of the senses. So similarly with there's the sense of hearing, and the ears are the seats of the sense of hearing. So I'm thinking it might have something to do with that, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said, because even in science, they know that the nose is not smelling. You know, like it's a chemical and some, you know, whatever the whole process, or the eyes are not seeing, or you know, like it's they put it in a nervous impulse or in brain chemical term, and you're putting it in terms of subtle senses.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that similarly, like the anus and evacuation is the organ adipotic, and then there's a sensory organ of like more subtle aspect to it. And also I don't understand how I connect with death. I understand that ordinary people, the soul departs through the anus. But in that purport, it also said that it's a seat of death.
Yeah. And
that's something I wasn't clear what it means, and I'm curious about it because of my own experience. You know, I've been asking for the last 9 months, in fact, to understand better why is it that that's a seat of my pain, and that, you know, like, okay, I could have pain so many places. And I would connect with death so directly with death. Yeah, and that's something I don't understand. But I like what you're saying, so that there is a gross aspect of the anus proper, like the organ, and then what's the subtle aspect, and that's what maybe is referred to in this text as sensory organ.
Perhaps.
And the sensory organ, so it's one sensory organ.
Yeah.
For sensing.
Just like, okay, so the adibotic, the body,
Yeah,
has eyes and hands and
Yeah.
legs and nose. Okay.
yeah,
And then we know the soul, the spirit, the soul also has their spiritual eyes, hands, legs, their spiritual.
yeah,
So also the subtle material body, which is the adhyatmika, or adidevic. We are adidevic for the ants we step on.
yeah,
Right. So the subtle material body also has sense of taste and sense of smell and sense of hearing. And so the subtle material body comes into the gross material body, and the gross material body has seats for the senses of the subtle material body. So I'm just saying that because we know spiritual body has all the senses, working senses like that in spiritual form. And then there's the gross material form. So then in between, there's the subtle material form of all the senses working in knowledge acquired.
So the sensory organ thereof. Yeah.
Is one of the reasons you're curious about it because that it was that the rectum is called an organ, but that's not, maybe is that not listed in the 24 elements? I don't know where it's like kind of where
It is there.
it is.
Yeah, it's part of the Sankhya as a working senses evacuation.
Working, but not sensing.
But
I'm just curious, like kind of where you're coming from.
it points to exactly why I'm curious.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like how does this fit in with the 24 elements?
yeah,
And I think when we hear about the 24 elements and it says nose, eyes, rectum, like that, it's not talking about, the nose we see when we look in the mirror. I think it's talking about the subtle essence of the subtle matter, sense of smell and vision. So that points to exactly my curiosity.
yeah. And in the canto, there is something that describes that, like even all that. And like we can imagine in our mind that, there is nose floating or ears floating, but it's on a subtle.
Yeah.
In the third canto explain, it's like they manifest the subtle aspect of them. And then the desire of the living entity kind of brings them to become gross.
Right.
Yeah. And to manifest externally. Yeah.
Bhagavad Gita chapter 15, Shariram Yadavatnoti Yatshapu Pramadishra, Prit Vaitani Samiti Vairagaya Vibhashaya. As the air carries aromas, the soul carries its conceptions of life and then gets a particular type of nose, eyes, ears.
Yeah.
But I think that's the subtle material senses. And then according to the subtle consciousness and the subtle matter, then we get a particular gross body. And we have a hand raised online.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your question. And I avoided speaking about it because I really didn't know. Anantini, Hare Krishna.
I think Len was first.
Oh, Len, I didn't see Len. Sorry, Len. Yes, Len Cohen.
Okay. Just to clarify how the anus could be a sensory organ, it's not just evacuating whole, but I mean, first of all, two things. There is some pleasure in evacuation when you're filled with the eatables and you're digesting, you want to get rid of it. And then there's a certain pleasure in evacuating and pain at times, yes. And secondly, I think, but more importantly, many people do, I mean, the sphincter muscle, the anus, and the nerves attached to it, it is a source of pleasure for people that have anal sex. So yeah, it's very much a sense organ that people are in relation to the genitals too. But yeah, there's such a thing as that. And so it's obviously a lot of sense gratification in that area. But anyway, I didn't want to, but I appreciate your class very much, very enlightening. And my mind was also thinking about the punishments that are involved in overly gratifying your senses, And that's a place that my mind is going right now. And also the shame that I experienced from childhood for many, many years because I didn't have control over my, not stool, but my urination. No control. So I lived in that shame for many, many years. And yeah, that just really does bring home to me that we don't have control, complete control of our senses and what's going on. So thank you very much, Malini. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
And thank you for your honesty in sharing all these deeply personal experiences of yours and your suffering in the past 9 months. And and talking about yesterday genitals and today's stool, very enlightening, and keeping it on a high level too, not being disgusted about it or shamed, but what we can learn from it. So the positive aspects of focusing on these gates of the body. I appreciate very much.
Yeah, thank you for your sharing, Len. But your sharing about your childhood and your shame about not being able to control the
Urination.
The urination. It brought home that like so much also the shame connected with the four regulatory principle, but also shame about things that we are thinking that we are controlling. And when they're not controlled, then we go into shame. So I think he had a different, additional dimension of like so much us or other thinking we should be in control, or us thinking we should be in control, when in fact we are not. And that illusion of independence or illusion of control leading to also shame. Yeah, I appreciate that. And about the sensory organ, what I know from my experience the last 9 months, including now, is that there is a lot of nerves and sensory activities happening in that part of the body, because that part of the body have really like the power to create so much pain. Not every part of the body has the same potential for pain. Some part of the body, like they were describing, the oncologists, like some cancers, they don't create much pain, and according to where they are at. But so sensory organ is definitely, there is a lot of sensory activity in that part of the body that we can really perceive. We can perceive what's happening, and we can perceive a lot of pain. And it's a seat of pain, like it said in the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, the text 40 that I was reading earlier. But I'm going back there just to. So it does have sensory ability. Sense means sensory ability to perceive. Yeah, and it's like the gate is known as a niriti, or the painful gate. The other one were not painful; they were cause of a lot of joy. But that specific gate is called niriti, or the painful gate. So it's designed for pain. That's sensory activities. Thank you very much for your sharing, dear Bhaktalen. Hare Krishna. Damayanti? Nandini, you had something you wanted to? No, our hand is not up anymore.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class. This past week, I had like a breakthrough in relation to shame. I signed up for a course called Transforming Shame, because I knew that was definitely the next thing that was ready to be addressed. Definitely was all coming to the surface, feelings of shame. And I had a couple of breakthroughs, and I'm loving the course, and everybody in the course is like, the teacher, everything the teacher says is like directly what every sentence I'm like it's like really answering questions and resolving things. And so I feel so much like Krishna sent me this course, and it's God-centered. I mean, it's not all about God. It's not what we're talking about God, but like we're talking about God comes up. And so anyway, I'm so grateful. And I just wanted to share that, like the cycle of shame, like, you know, some things happen, maybe even previous to this lifetime, where we're doing things that cause us to feel guilt and regret and shame, you know, and for, you know, but let's just say in this lifetime, it's easier to say like whatever happened that I accumulated shame. And then if we want to cover it up, or numb it, and we do self-sabotaging. This is just something, this is my realization. Like, okay, we do self-sabotaging things to not experience the shame. And then those self-sabotaging things are usually causing more shame.
Yeah.
It's like out of alignment with the soul.
Mm-hmm.
So we're covering up previous pain, and we're adding to it layers of pain. And it's a really, and I think in a lot of ways, I don't know, I don't really want to like speculate, but I think that shame is running a lot. I mean, I know fear of me running, you know, pain, you know, but I think shame is running a lot of humanity to numb how out of alignment we are with our true self, you know. And I was struggling in this particular session on Monday, and I was like irritated and like resistance, like so much resistance was coming up, and I didn't even know the person that well, the practitioner, but I felt safe to say like, I don't even want to do that. I don't even want to do what you're suggesting. And then he was like, great, you know, that he was great. He wasn't like, you know, upset that I wasn't wanting to do some process. He was like, okay, so you're just adjusting, like this resistance is coming. Anyway, I won't go into all that, but what in the middle of my struggle, and I was struck, and we somehow self-sabotage came up, because I was in discussion about my self-sabotage. And he said, you know, like he softened the story I was telling myself, like self-sabotage is wrong, like I had it in a bad category. He said that was just a protection. And then as soon as, you know, whenever we self-sabotage, we're trying to protect ourselves from pain. And when I had that perspective, like, oh, that protection doesn't serve me anymore. And maybe I could find another source of protection that I could lean on that will serve me so much more than this previous self-sabotaging. And I have all different kinds of self-sabotaging habits. And I know that we all do. And anyway, just that distinction, I mean, not to mention all the process and everything helped me, like, I felt released, like I kept a choice where I take shelter. I can take shelter in all of the habits that keep everything in place and keep me miserable, you know, and I could stay there because that was a previous form of protection. Or like maybe there's this other possibility to take shelter in Krishna. What would that be like? And I felt so much release of shame. And I felt so much peace imagining like a life where I could just be like, hey, you know, I'm not in charge of who I am, the desires in my heart. You know, I can just be like really simple and like follow the shelter of Krishna and not worry about so much, like you have so much torment and self-sabotage and all that. Anyway, I just thought I'd share because it was relevant. And it's this realization like sort of lasted all week where I feel like so much more peace all week. I have previously a mind that is like tormenting with me with self-doubt and questions and like analyzing and what are my feelings and my thoughts, and kind of like just going crazy inside. But now I have this new concept that maybe I could just be simple and like follow Srila Prabhupada or follow the indications that I'm getting from Krishna of who I am and how to live, and you know, and just be simple about it. And like if something's wrong, if I'm off, I can always adjust, no big deal. Like I don't need to analyze. Anyway, I could share more, but I feel it's interesting how earlier in the class you said something about dependence. I don't remember exactly how it was related, but it was like we were talking about dependence on the Lord. And I think it's closely related to how we keep shame in place. Thank you for hearing me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Like, shame is so connected with thinking that I am this body. I am this body, I am this mind, I have this intelligence, I am this action, I am my conditioning. And then because this body, that mind does do things that I consider bad, then the shame come, like, and then the shame lead to numbing. Like you have a drunkard who drink alcohol, and then you feel so much shame that I just drunk, then I need to drink to cover the shame. Yeah. And then, we do have independence. The thing is that we have independence. It's not like we are not absolutely independent, but we have independence. And that independence can be used to come to a place of, I am fallen. I have no good qualities. And I'm going to be simple about it. Not going to be all creating so many layers of complexity and self-sabotage mechanism. I'm just going to be, I'm a snake, I'm a pig, I'm a whatever. And that snake and that pig is going to follow Srila Prabhupada's guidance. And that can be that simple without needing to I need to change a snake into a swan, or I need to change a swan, the pig into a cow or whatever. It's just, no, I'm where I am at, and I come to acceptance. And in that dependence, I depend on Krishna, I depend on Srila Prabhupada, and I follow their guidance and their process. And then moment to moment, I know what to do, and I know the choices. I can choose to drink, or I can choose to read Bhagavatam. That's our independence.
Really. I like this chapter title a lot. I've been meditating on this chapter title. Srimad Bhagavatam is the answer to 12 questions. I let myself really contemplate that since last weekend, and that's transformative.
Yeah. That's a good way to use our ability for analysis.
Yeah, and it transformed my home, just that concept. And I brought it home, and we had all these dynamics, and I was like, well, what if we were just Krishna conscious? Instead of, now I need to find some parenting technique and a tool. We all need to get on board. Like, I don't know. It was just like, no, we don't need to be complicated. Let's just be more Krishna conscious. And we have a whole family transformation too that happened based on just that chapter title. It's like, okay, I just really like that. It's also just like, it's freeing, What about turning to God and being connected to, to Krishna and our soul, and I'm not to be done. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Why not? Why not? Taking shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada's teaching, Srila Prabhupada's guidance, and then life can be very simple. And we get all the answer to all our situation. Nothing's missing. Thank you. Grand Torah Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ko Apremanandi.